Rachel Morgan's day started like any other Tuesday. She kissed her husband Derek goodbye as he left for his quarterly business trip to Cleveland, rolled her eyes at his reminder to take her sedan in for its overdue oil change, and promised to water the fiddle leaf fig plant he babied more than anything in their suburban Atlanta home. What made this particular Tuesday different was the series of small inconveniences that would change the course of Rachel's life forever. First, her 5-year-old Audi refused to start, the battery completely dead despite no warning signs the previous day. Then, the earliest appointment she could get for a new battery was Thursday, leaving her temporarily without transportation. Finally, her best friend Mia canceled their lunch plans due to a sick child. These minor disruptions led to an innocuous text exchange with Derek, who had landed in Cleveland just hours earlier. Car battery died. Getting it replaced Thursday. Can I use your Lexus until then? His response came quickly, sure. Keys on my nightstand. Don't mess with any settings please. Rachel smiled at his predictable response. Derek was meticulous about his things, especially his precious black Lexus SUV with its custom leather interior and top-of-the-line sound system. In their 15 years of marriage, she'd driven it fewer than a dozen times. Don't mess with any settings, she mimicked aloud to herself as she retrieved the keys. Heaven forbid I adjust your perfectly positioned seat that makes me feel like a child driving a tank. She adjusted the seat anyway, along with the mirrors and steering wheel height. If she was going to drive this vehicle for 3 days, she needed to be comfortable. Derek would just have to spend 5 minutes readjusting everything when he returned on Friday. It wasn't until Rachel was halfway to the grocery store that the car's Bluetooth system automatically connected to a phone, but not hers. The dashboard display lit up with the words, "Connected, Derek work phone." Rachel frowned. Derek's work phone should be with him in Cleveland. He was fastidious about keeping his personal and professional lives separate, carrying 2 phones at all times. The personal one for family and friends, the work one for his job as a medical equipment sales director. That's weird, she murmured, glancing at the passenger seat where the phone must have fallen out of his bag. Sure enough, a black iPhone in a nondescript case lay partially hidden by the seatbelt buckle. At the next red light, Rachel picked up the phone. The screen was dark, but the device was clearly powered on. Derek would need this. She should let him know. When she arrived at the grocery store parking lot, she called her husband's personal phone. "Hey babe," he answered, the familiar sounds of an airport in the background. "How's my car treating you?" "Fine, but I found your work phone in the passenger seat." It connected to the Bluetooth automatically. A beat of silence. "My work phone?" "Yes, the black iPhone. It must have fallen out of your bag." Another pause, longer this time. "Oh, that's my old work phone. I've been meaning to turn it in. My new one's with me. Should I mail it to you at the hotel?" No, Derek said quickly. "Just leave it in the car. I'll deal with it when I get back." Something in his tone struck Rachel as off, but she couldn't place exactly what. "Okay, if you're sure." "Completely sure. Thanks for letting me know. Gotta run, they're calling my connection. Love you." The call ended before she could respond. Rachel sat staring at the blank dashboard display where the phone connection had been shown. Derek's explanation made sense. Companies updated employee phones all the time. Yet something nagged at her, a slight hesitation in his voice, perhaps? The abrupt ending of the call? She shook her head, dismissing the thought. 15 years of marriage had taught her that Derek was nothing if not predictable, reliable, and transparent. The man color-coded their shared calendar and labeled all the leftovers with contents and dates. He wasn't exactly the secretive type. Rachel completed her grocery shopping and returned to Derek's Lexus. As she started the engine, the dashboard lit up again, "Connected, Derek work phone." On impulse, she touched the navigation icon on the display. The system opened to show recent destinations. Rachel expected to see Derek's office, maybe the airport or his favorite lunch spots. Instead, the most recent destination, used just 2 days ago, was an address in Blue Ridge, Georgia, about 90 minutes north of Atlanta in the mountains. The entry was labeled simply, "Cabin." Rachel stared at the screen. Blue Ridge was a popular vacation area, known for its scenic mountain views and lakeside cabins. But Derek had always insisted he hated mountain getaways. Why would anyone voluntarily isolate themselves in the woods with spotty cell service and the constant threat of bear encounters? He'd asked more than once when she suggested a mountain weekend. His resistance was so strong that they'd compromised on beach vacations for years, despite Rachel's love of mountain hiking. So why had Derek's GPS directed him to a cabin in Blue Ridge 2 days ago? Rachel checked the history. The cabin destination appeared regularly in the system, approximately once a month for the past year, always on a weekend. She pulled out her own phone and opened their shared calendar app. Sure enough, Derek had been working late or taking golf days with clients on most of those same weekends. A cold feeling settled in Rachel's stomach. She told herself there must be a reasonable explanation. Perhaps a client owned a cabin and Derek had been reluctant to tell her about his mountain visits for fear she'd insist on joining him someday. Or maybe he'd been planning a surprise, secretly preparing a mountain getaway despite his proclaimed hatred for them. But the regularity of the visits, always on weekends, always unmentioned. Before she could talk herself out of it, Rachel entered the Blue Ridge address into her phone's GPS. 1 hour and 26 minutes to destination, the automated voice announced. Rachel took a deep breath. Derek wouldn't be home until Friday. She had time to drive up, take a quick look, and return. Just to satisfy her curiosity. Just to prove to herself that her instincts were wrong and there was a simple explanation for everything. She called her neighbor Susan and asked her to collect any packages that might arrive while she was gone overnight. Just taking a spontaneous personal retreat, she explained vaguely. I need some me time. The drive to Blue Ridge took Rachel through increasingly mountainous terrain, the urban sprawl of Atlanta giving way to rolling hills and eventually the dense forests of North Georgia. Under different circumstances, she would have enjoyed the spectacular early autumn colors and the winding mountain roads. But her mind was consumed with creating and discarding potential explanations for Derek's secret cabin visits. By the time she reached the outskirts of Blue Ridge, she had convinced herself she was overreacting. There would be a logical reason. There always was with Derek. The GPS directed her off the main road onto a gravel drive that wound up the mountainside. The road grew narrower, the trees taller and denser on either side. Just as Rachel began to wonder if she'd taken a wrong turn, the forest opened to reveal a clearing with a stunning modern cabin perched on the hillside, its wall of windows facing what must be a spectacular view of the Blue Ridge Mountains. This was no rustic woodland retreat. The architecture was sleek and contemporary, with clean lines and a dramatic roofline. A wraparound deck extended the living space outdoors, complete with what appeared to be a hot tub on one corner. Rachel parked behind a cluster of trees where her car, Derek's car, wouldn't be immediately visible from the cabin. Her heart hammered in her chest as she considered her next move. The property appeared empty, no vehicles in the open carport. She approached cautiously, climbing the steps to the expansive front deck. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see an open-concept living area with modern furniture and a stone fireplace. It looked like something from an architectural magazine, minimal, expensive, and completely unlike the traditional suburban home she shared with Derek. Rachel cupped her hands around her eyes to block the glare on the windows, peering deeper into the space. Her gaze landed on a large framed photograph above the fireplace. Even from outside, she could clearly make out the image, Derek, his arm around a woman Rachel had never seen before, both of them smiling broadly at the camera. Her legs nearly gave out beneath her. She grabbed the deck railing for support, her mind refusing to process what her eyes were seeing. With trembling hands, she tried the front door. Locked. She moved along the deck, testing windows and the rear sliding door. All secured. Then she remembered Derek's predictability. At their home, he always kept a spare key hidden in a magnetic box under the gas meter. Would he be as consistent here? Rachel located the cabin's utility connections on the side of the building. There, tucked under the electric meter in a small magnetic case identical to the one at their home, was a key. Her hand shook so badly she dropped the key twice before successfully inserting it into the lock. The door swung open, and Rachel stepped into the silent cabin. The interior was even more impressive up close. High ceilings with exposed wooden beams, polished concrete floors softened by expensive area rugs, custom lighting highlighting carefully chosen artwork. It was sophisticated and modern, nothing like the traditional furnishings Derek had always insisted he preferred. But it was the personal touches that truly destroyed Rachel's remaining hope for an innocent explanation. The framed photograph above the fireplace showed Derek and a beautiful brunette woman, probably in her early 30s, at least a decade younger than Rachel's 45 years. They stood on this very deck, the mountains a spectacular backdrop, their posture intimately comfortable with each other. It wasn't the only photograph. As Rachel moved through the space in a daze, she discovered more images. The woman and Derek hiking with a chocolate Labrador retriever Rachel had never seen, the two of them kayaking on what must be nearby Lake Blue Ridge, a selfie of them bundled up by a winter bonfire, snow visible on the ground around them. These weren't recent photos. They spanned seasons, years, possibly. In the kitchen, a coffee mug and the dish drainer bore the name Emma in flowing script. A dog leash hung by the door. The refrigerator contained fresh food, including a half-empty bottle of kombucha, a drink Derek had always claimed to despise when Rachel bought it. Upstairs, the master bedroom featured a king-sized bed with rumpled linens that clearly hadn't been changed after its last use. On the nightstand, a women's novel, a pair of reading glasses, a tube of hand cream. In the closet, women's clothing occupied one side, men's the other. Rachel recognized several of Derek's shirts and sweaters, items she thought lived in their home in Atlanta but apparently maintained a second residence here. The bathroom counter held 2 toothbrushes in a shared holder. His and hers towels hung neatly on warming racks. A shower shelf contained shampoos and body washes that Rachel had never seen in their shared home. Every new discovery was another body blow. This wasn't just an affair. This was a fully realized parallel life that her husband had been living without her knowledge. Rachel sank onto the edge of the bed, her mind spinning. How long had this been going on? Who was this woman, this Emma? Did she know about Rachel? Was she an innocent party in Derek's deception, or a willing accomplice? Almost robotically, Rachel began opening drawers and cabinets, searching for answers. In the desk in what appeared to be a small home office, she found property tax documents for the cabin. They were in Derek's name alone, dated 3 years ago. He'd owned this place for 3 years without ever mentioning it to her. Next to the tax documents was a veterinary record for Baxter, a chocolate Labrador retriever, showing Derek Morgan and Emma Collins as the owners. Emma Collins. Now she had a full name. Rachel's phone vibrated in her pocket. A text from Derek. How's everything going? Car running okay? She stared at the message, unable to formulate a response that wouldn't betray her discovery. Finally, she typed, everything's fine. Just a normal day. His reply came quickly, great. In meetings all afternoon. Talk tonight? Sure, she responded, the single word containing none of the turmoil raging inside her. Rachel continued her methodical exploration of the cabin, documenting everything with her phone's camera. In a kitchen drawer, she found birthday cards addressed to My Darling Derek, signed with hearts and Emma's name. The dates showed they'd been celebrating his birthday together for at least 4 years. 4 years. A third of her marriage had been a lie. In the home office, a framed professional certificate on the wall caught her attention. It recognized Emma Collins, Ph.D., for her contributions to a research project on climate-adaptive agriculture. So Emma was some kind of scientist or researcher. As afternoon faded to evening, Rachel realized she needed a plan. The initial shock was giving way to a cold, clear anger that demanded action. But what action? Confront Derek immediately? Wait until he returned from his business trip? Try to find and contact Emma? She sat at the kitchen island, opened her laptop, and began searching for information. Emma Collins, Ph.D., was easy to find, an environmental scientist at a research institute affiliated with the University of Georgia. Her professional profile included a photograph confirming she was indeed the woman from the cabin photos. Further searching revealed Emma's social media accounts. Though they were mostly private, Rachel could see enough to determine that Emma posted nothing about Derek. No couple photos, no mentions of a significant other. Their relationship, whatever its nature, was kept off her public profiles. As night fell, Rachel faced a decision. She could return to Atlanta and confront Derek when he came home Friday, or she could stay at the cabin and see if Cleveland was actually code for Blue Ridge. If Derek had lied about his business trip and planned to spend the week here with Emma, Rachel could catch them together. The thought made her physically ill, but the need for absolute confirmation outweighed her disgust. Rachel sent another text to Derek, going to bed early, tired from all the running around today. Talk tomorrow? Sure thing. Sweet dreams. Love you, came his response. The casual love you nearly broke her. How many times had he sent similar messages while sitting in this very cabin with another woman? Rachel settled onto the living room couch, not wanting to sleep in their bed. She kept the lights off, the cabin illuminated only by her laptop screen as she continued her investigation. Property records for the cabin showed Derek had purchased it outright 3 years ago for $480,000. No mortgage. The money had come from somewhere, but not their joint accounts. Rachel managed their shared finances and would have noticed such a withdrawal. Did Derek have hidden accounts? Was he earning more than he reported to her? Their finances had always seemed transparent, with shared accounts for most expenses and small personal accounts for discretionary spending. But the cabin purchase suggested a level of financial deception she hadn't imagined possible. As midnight approached, Rachel finally allowed herself to cry, quiet, racking sobs that left her gasping for breath. 15 years of marriage, dissolved in an afternoon of discovery. The future she'd believed in, revealed as fiction. Eventually, emotional exhaustion pulled her into restless sleep on the couch, her dreams haunted by images of Derek and Emma enjoying the life he'd built in this beautiful mountain cabin, the type of place he'd sworn to Rachel he would never want to visit, let alone own. Morning came with cold clarity. Rachel awoke knowing exactly what she wanted to do. Rachel showered in the cabin's luxurious bathroom, using Emma's expensive shampoo without guilt. She dressed in yesterday's clothes and made coffee in the gourmet kitchen, drinking from a mug that said Blue Ridge Mountains while formulating her plan. First, she called her attorney, Barbara Winters, who had helped draft their wills years earlier. After briefly explaining the situation, Rachel asked a critical question: if the cabin is in Derek's name only, purchased during our marriage without my knowledge, what are my legal rights regarding the property? Barbara's response was measured. Georgia is an equitable distribution state, so assets acquired during marriage are generally considered marital property regardless of whose name appears on the title. However, there are exceptions and complications. I'd need more details before advising specific actions. I understand, Rachel replied. Can you recommend a real estate attorney who could consult with me today? I need to understand my options quickly. Barbara provided a name, Martin Reynolds, a colleague who specialized in property law. Be careful, Rachel, she cautioned. Don't make permanent decisions while emotional. Rachel thanked her and immediately called Martin Reynolds, securing an appointment for 2 p.m. in his Atlanta office. Next, she methodically photographed every room in the cabin, documenting the evidence of Derek's double life. She found utility bills in a kitchen drawer showing service in Derek's name with Emma listed as an authorized person on the account. She discovered a property tax assessment indicating the cabin's current value at $625,000, significantly more than the purchase price 3 years ago. In the home office, a locked file cabinet surrendered to the same key that had opened the front door. Inside, Rachel found what she was looking for: the property deed, purchase agreement, and homeowner's insurance policy. She photographed each document, then carefully returned everything exactly as she'd found it. Before leaving, Rachel wrote a note on the cabin's stationery pad. Came looking for my husband's forgotten work phone, found much more than expected. We'll be in touch. She left it prominently on the kitchen counter, where it couldn't be missed. On the drive back to Atlanta, Rachel called her sister Kate in Boston. He has a whole secret life, Rachel explained, her voice surprisingly steady. A cabin, a girlfriend, even a dog. For at least 4 years. Kate's explosive response contained enough profanity to make Rachel momentarily smile despite everything. What are you going to do? Kate finally asked. Want me to fly down? We could burn his designer clothes on the front lawn. I'm seeing a real estate attorney this afternoon. And no pyrotechnics yet, Rachel replied. I need to be strategic. Why a real estate attorney? Planning to take him for everything? I'm exploring my options regarding the cabin specifically. Good. Nail the bastard to the wall, Kate declared. And I mean it about flying down. Just say the word. Rachel promised to keep her sister updated and ended the call as she reached Atlanta's outskirts. At exactly 2 p.m., Rachel sat across from Martin Reynolds in his downtown office, having changed into fresh clothes at home and brought her laptop with the photos and documents. Interesting situation, Reynolds said after hearing her story and reviewing the evidence. The cabin is clearly marital property despite being solely in your husband's name. In a divorce, you'd be entitled to an equitable share, not necessarily 50%, but a fair portion based on various factors. What about selling it? Rachel asked. Right now, before divorce proceedings? Reynolds looked concerned. That's problematic. Without his consent or a court order, you can't legally sell property titled only in his name. But it's marital property, as you said. Yes, for purposes of division during divorce. But for a sale transaction, you need legal authority to act on the titled owner's behalf. Rachel considered this information. What if I had his power of attorney? That would potentially give you the authority, depending on the specific provisions, Reynolds acknowledged. Do you have such a document? Yes, Rachel said, pulling a folder from her bag. We both completed durable powers of attorney 5 years ago. We're each other's healthcare proxies and have broad financial powers of attorney. Reynolds examined the document carefully. This is quite comprehensive. It authorizes you to act on his behalf regarding real estate transactions, among other things. However, he cautioned, using power of attorney to sell property without the principal's knowledge, especially in circumstances like these, enters ethically questionable territory. I understand the ethical considerations, Rachel said calmly. But legally, could I do it? Reynolds hesitated. Technically, yes. With this document, you could execute a sale. But I must advise you that your husband could later challenge the transaction, claiming misuse of the power of attorney. Courts take a dim view of fiduciary powers being used against the principal's interests. If the proceeds went into our joint account, would that make a difference? Potentially. It would be harder to claim you acted against his financial interests if you didn't personally benefit separate from him. Reynolds leaned forward. Mrs. Morgan, I understand you're hurt and angry. But selling your husband's property without his knowledge could complicate your eventual divorce proceedings. Rachel nodded. I appreciate your candor. One more question. If I were to sell the cabin, how quickly could it be done? With motivated buyers and an aggressive agent, a cash transaction could close in as little as a week to 10 days. But finding those buyers is the challenge. Luxury properties typically have longer market times. Rachel thanked him for the consultation and left with a clearer understanding of her options and their potential consequences. Her next stop was a branch of their bank, where she reviewed recent account activity. Nothing suspicious in their joint accounts, but this just confirmed her suspicion that Derek maintained separate finances she knew nothing about. By evening, Rachel had returned to their suburban home, her mind made up. She called a friend who worked as a luxury real estate agent in the mountains. Vanessa, I need your help with something unconventional, Rachel began. And complete discretion is essential. After explaining the basics of the situation, Rachel made her request. I want to sell a luxury cabin in Blue Ridge immediately, significantly under market value to ensure a quick sale. How significantly under market? Vanessa asked. The cabin appraised at $625,000. I'd list it for $450,000 cash, contingent on closing within 10 days. Vanessa whistled. That's giving away almost $200,000. I'm aware. Speed and certainty are my priorities. I have investors who buy luxury properties as vacation rentals, Vanessa said thoughtfully. They'd jump at this opportunity. But Rachel, are you sure about this? Absolutely certain, Rachel replied. Can you handle the showing and paperwork remotely? I'd prefer not to return to the cabin. Yes, I can coordinate everything. I'll need the power of attorney document since the property isn't in your name. You'll have it tonight. How soon can you show the property? I'll contact my investors immediately. We could potentially have offers tomorrow if the property is as impressive as you describe. Rachel felt a cold satisfaction as she ended the call. She emailed Vanessa photos of the cabin along with the power of attorney document, then settled in to wait for Derek's evening check-in call. When her phone rang at 8 p.m., she answered with practiced normalcy. Hey, how was your day? Exhausting, Derek sighed. Back-to-back meetings with the hospital procurement team. How about you? Productive, Rachel replied truthfully. Got the groceries, handled some paperwork I've been putting off. Any word on when your car will be fixed? Thursday as planned. Your Lexus is running beautifully though. Such a smooth ride. They chatted for another 10 minutes, Derek sharing fictional details about his Cleveland meetings while Rachel maintained her facade of unsuspecting normalcy. The ease with which he lied, the specific details, the manufactured frustrations with clients, the hotel-restaurant recommendations, was chilling. Had he always been this accomplished at deception? 3 more days of meetings, then home Friday evening, he concluded. Don't forget to water my fiddle leaf figure. I won't forget, Rachel promised. Have a good night. After hanging up, she checked her email to find a message from Vanessa, 3 investors interested. First showing tomorrow at 11 a.m. Expect offers by afternoon. Everything was proceeding perfectly. Rachel allowed herself a small, grim smile before heading upstairs to begin the next phase of her plan. In their bedroom, she methodically examined Derek's side of the closet, identifying and removing anything particularly valuable or meaningful to him. The custom-tailored suits he'd acquired during a business trip to Hong Kong. The vintage watch collection inherited from his grandfather. The signed first-edition novels he'd been collecting since college. These items she carefully packed into storage bins, which she then loaded into her repaired Audi on Thursday morning, transporting them to a climate-controlled storage unit she'd rented under her maiden name. Not stealing, just ensuring these treasured possessions wouldn't become collateral damage in what would come next. By Thursday afternoon, Rachel had accepted an all-cash offer of $455,000 for the cabin, with closing scheduled for the following Wednesday. The buyers, a wealthy couple from Florida looking for a vacation property, had agreed to all terms without negotiation, recognizing the exceptional value. Using her power of attorney, Rachel signed the preliminary documents Vanessa sent over. The process was underway, the clock ticking on Derek's secret mountain sanctuary. That evening, Rachel's phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. this is Emma Collins. We need to talk. Please call me. Rachel stared at the message, her heart suddenly pounding. Emma had found her note. Perhaps she'd searched property records and found Rachel's name as Derek's spouse. After several minutes of consideration, Rachel responded, I agree. But I prefer to meet in person. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Café Luna in Buckhead. Emma's reply came quickly, I'll be there. Rachel spent a restless night contemplating this unexpected development. What did Emma know? What did she want? Was she an innocent victim of Derek's deceptions, or had she knowingly participated in an affair with a married man? The next morning, Rachel arrived at Café Luna 30 minutes early, selecting a table in the corner with a clear view of the entrance. She ordered a latte and waited, studying each woman who entered, wondering which would be Emma. At precisely 10 a.m., a slender brunette in her mid-30s entered the café, her gaze scanning the room until it landed on Rachel. Their eyes met, and a flash of recognition passed between them. Each knew instantly who the other was, despite never having met. Emma approached the table with measured steps, her expression guarded but not hostile. Rachel? I'm Emma Collins. Rachel gestured to the empty chair across from her. Please, sit. Up close, Emma was even more attractive than in the photographs, naturally pretty with minimal makeup, intelligent eyes, and an air of quiet confidence. She wore simple black pants with a blue blouse that brought out flecks of color in her hazel eyes. Rachel hated that she noticed these details, hated even more the immediate comparison her mind made between Emma's youthful appearance and her own middle-aged self. Thank you for meeting me, Emma began after ordering a tea from the server. I found your note at the cabin. I assumed as much, Rachel replied, her voice remarkably steady. Are you there now? Is Derek with you? Emma's eyes widened slightly. No. Derek's in Cleveland until this evening. I go up to the cabin some weekends. I have a key. Rachel absorbed this information. So Emma didn't know Derek had lied about his location. Interesting. How long have you known? Emma asked. About me, about the cabin? I discovered it 3 days ago. Derek left his work phone in his car, which I borrowed while mine was being repaired. The GPS history led me to the cabin. Rachel studied Emma's face. How long have you known about me? Now Emma looked genuinely confused. Known about you? I don't understand. About Derek's wife, Rachel clarified. About me. Emma's face drained of color. Wife. Derek isn't married. The silence that followed was thick with shock on both sides. Rachel recovered first. We've been married for 15 years, she said quietly, removing her phone from her purse and finding a recent photo of her and Derek at a charity function. She slid the phone across the table. Emma stared at the image, her hand trembling slightly as she picked up the phone for a closer look. This is recent? 2 months ago. The Atlanta Children's Hospital Gala. Emma set the phone down carefully, as if it might shatter. He told me he was divorced. 5 years ago when we met. Said his ex-wife lived in Chicago, that they had no children and little contact. She looked up at Rachel, her eyes filling with tears. We've been together for 4 years. We've talked about marriage. About starting a family. The raw pain in Emma's voice convinced Rachel that this woman had indeed been deceived, just as thoroughly as she had. I'm sorry, Rachel said, surprised to find she genuinely meant it. I don't think either of us knew the full truth about Derek Morgan. Collins, Emma said faintly. Pardon? He told me his name is Derek Collins. Said he changed it after his divorce to make a fresh start. Emma's hands curled into fists on the table. Everything is a lie. Rachel let this new revelation sink in. Derek had created an entirely different identity, even changing his surname to match Emma's. The depth of his deception was staggering. Do you love him? Rachel asked, immediately regretting the question. I'm sorry. That's not fair to ask. Yes, I love him, Emma answered anyway, wiping away a tear. Or I love the man I thought he was. I don't know who he really is anymore. She took a deep breath. Do you? Still love him, I mean? Rachel considered the question carefully. I love the man I believed I was married to. But that man doesn't exist. Derek, whatever his real name should be, is someone neither of us actually knows. Emma nodded slowly. What do we do now? I've already taken action regarding the cabin, Rachel said, deciding full disclosure was the fairest approach. I'm selling it. The closing is next Wednesday. Selling it? Emma looked shocked. How? It's in Derek's name. I have his power of attorney. And since it was purchased during our marriage with marital assets, I have legal standing. Emma didn't challenge this, instead asking, what about his things? My things? The buyers are allowing a 5-day window after closing for personal property removal. I'll make sure you have access to collect your belongings. Rachel paused. Including Baxter. The dog is yours, I assume? Yes. He stays with my parents when we're not at the cabin. Emma looked down at her untouched tea. You're being surprisingly reasonable about all this. My anger isn't directed at you, Rachel clarified. You appear to be as much a victim of Derek's lies as I am. When are you confronting him? Emma asked. He's supposedly returning from Cleveland tonight. I plan to be waiting at home with the evidence I've gathered. Emma straightened in her chair, a new resolve visible in her expression. I'd like to be there too. Rachel hadn't expected this. You want to confront him together? Yes. He should have to face both of us simultaneously. No opportunity to create new lies or play us against each other. Emma's voice strengthened. He's manipulated us both for years. We deserve to see his reaction when everything collapses around him. The idea had merit. Derek would find it harder to deflect or lie with both women present, each with different pieces of the full picture. He's scheduled to arrive home around 7 p.m., Rachel said after a moment's consideration. Come at 6:30. We'll be waiting for him. They exchanged phone numbers and finished working out the details of their ambush. As they prepared to leave, Emma hesitated. There's something else you should know, she said, her voice dropping lower. Derek has a significant amount of money invested in cryptocurrency. He showed me his digital wallet once, over $2 million. He said it was from a tech startup he was involved with before we met. Rachel absorbed this new information with growing anger. $2 million hidden away while they lived upper-middle-class lives, carefully budgeting for vacations and retirement contributions. Thank you for telling me, she said. That will be useful information for my divorce attorney. They parted with an awkward handshake, two women connected by deception, now allied in their pursuit of truth and consequences. Rachel spent the afternoon making final preparations. She contacted her attorney to initiate divorce proceedings, with papers to be served early the following week. She transferred half the money from their joint accounts into her private account, leaving detailed documentation of the transaction on Derek's desk. At precisely 6:30 p.m., the doorbell rang. Rachel opened it to find Emma standing on her porch, looking both determined and slightly ill. Ready? Rachel asked. Emma nodded. As I'll ever be. Rachel led her into the living room, where she had arranged key evidence on the coffee table, photographs of the cabin, financial documents, the power of attorney, and printouts of text messages between Derek and Emma that she'd found on the work phone. His flight should be landing now, Rachel noted, checking her watch. He'll text when he's on his way home. As if on cue, her phone buzzed with a message from Derek. Just landed. Grabbing an Uber. Home in about 45 minutes. Rachel showed Emma the text. And now we wait. They sat in tense silence for several minutes before Emma spoke. Your home is lovely. Very traditional. Thank you. Completely different from the cabin's modern aesthetic, isn't it? Yes. He told me he'd always preferred contemporary design but his ex-wife had traditional tastes. Emma shook her head. So many unnecessary lies. The more I discover, the more I wonder if anything was ever true, Rachel agreed. Another stretch of silence, then Emma asked, do you have children? No. Derek always said he wasn't ready. That his career needed to be established first. Rachel looked at Emma. I'm guessing he told you something different? He said he wanted children but his ex-wife didn't. We've been trying for about 6 months now. Emma's voice broke slightly. I'm actually late. I was going to take a test this weekend at the cabin. Rachel felt a new wave of fury on Emma's behalf. The possibility that Derek had been trying to start a family with his girlfriend while still married added yet another reprehensible layer to his deception. I'm sorry, she said inadequately. They continued talking intermittently, piecing together Derek's elaborate dual life from their respective experiences. Each new revelation reinforced the magnitude of his betrayal and strengthened their resolve to confront him together. At 7:28 p.m., Rachel's phone buzzed again. Home in 5. Can't wait to see you. He's almost here, Rachel told Emma, who had gone pale but nodded resolutely. They positioned themselves in the living room, Rachel seated in an armchair and Emma on the couch, the evidence arranged between them. The minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness until finally they heard the sound of an Uber pulling into the driveway, followed by a car door closing and footsteps approaching the front door. Rachel took a deep breath. This is it. The key turned in the lock, the front door opened, and Derek Morgan, or Collins, or whoever he truly was, stepped into the house and into the reckoning that had been years in the making. Derek stepped into the foyer, wheeling his carry-on suitcase behind him. Rachel? I'm home, he called, his voice carrying the easy confidence of a man who believed his world was exactly as he'd left it. He rounded the corner into the living room, a smile fixed on his face, a smile that froze, then crumbled as he registered the scene before him. His wife and girlfriend seated across from each other, his secret life laid bare between them on the coffee table. What? He started, but no further words emerged as his gaze darted from Rachel to Emma and back again. Hello, Derek, Rachel said calmly. Or is it Derek Collins now? I'm not sure which name you're using at the moment. The color drained from his face. He stood paralyzed in the doorway, still gripping the handle of his suitcase as if considering a hasty retreat. Aren't you going to say something? Emma asked, her voice steady despite the slight tremor in her hands. No explanations? No excuses? Derek's shock gave way to a calculating look Rachel recognized from difficult negotiations they'd navigated during their marriage. He was assessing the situation, measuring what they knew, searching for an angle. This isn't what it looks like, he began. Rachel laughed, a sharp sound devoid of humor. Really? That's your opening line? Because it looks exactly like you've been living a double life for years. Married to me in Atlanta, playing house with Emma at your secret Blue Ridge cabin. You've been to the cabin, he stated flatly, abandoning any pretense of denial. Yes, Derek. I found your work phone in the Lexus and followed the GPS history. Quite the beautiful place, exactly the kind of mountain retreat you've always insisted you'd never want. Rachel gestured to the evidence spread across the table. I found everything. The photographs, the financial records, the life you've been building separate from our marriage. Derek's gaze shifted to Emma. How did you two connect? I left a note at the cabin, Rachel explained. Emma reached out, and we met this morning. Compared notes, so to speak. You told me you were divorced, Emma said, her composure beginning to crack. You told me your ex-wife lived in Chicago. You said your name was Derek Collins. I can explain. Stop. Rachel held up her hand. There's no explanation that could possibly justify years of elaborate deception. You didn't just have an affair, Derek. You constructed an entire parallel life. You invented a different identity. You made promises to both of us that were fundamentally incompatible. Derek finally released his suitcase and moved into the room, sinking heavily onto the ottoman, his head in his hands. This wasn't supposed to happen, he muttered. What wasn't? Emma demanded. Getting caught? Having to face both of your women at once? He looked up, his expression pained. I never meant to hurt either of you. Yet here we are, Rachel noted. Both deeply hurt, both betrayed by years of calculated lies. Derek straightened, switching tactics. I know this looks bad. It is bad. But I do love both of you, in different ways. Rachel, we've built a life together over 15 years. Emma, what we have is something special too. I just couldn't bring myself to end either relationship. Emma recoiled. So your solution was to maintain both indefinitely? To start trying for a baby with me while still married to her? This new information visibly shocked Derek. You know about that? We've shared everything, Rachel informed him. Every detail of your deceptions. The cryptocurrency account with $2 million that you never disclosed to me. The dog you share with Emma despite claiming to be allergic to pets. The cabin you purchased 3 years ago without my knowledge. Derek flinched at each revelation. The cabin, he said slowly. You went there. Did you change anything? If you're asking whether your secret love nest is still intact, the answer is not for long, Rachel replied coldly. I've sold it. You've what? Derek bolted to his feet. You can't do that. The cabin is in my name. Power of attorney, Rachel reminded him, holding up the document. And excellent legal advice confirming that property acquired during our marriage is marital property, regardless of whose name appears on the title. This is insane, Derek sputtered. I'll contest it. I'll sue. You can't sell my property without consent. The sale closes Wednesday, Rachel continued as if he hadn't spoken. The new owners are allowing 5 days for personal property removal. I've assured Emma she'll have access to collect her belongings and Baxter's things. Derek's face contorted with rage and disbelief. You're bluffing. No buyer would move that fast. Cash offer, $455,000. Significantly under market value, which is why they jumped at it. All the paperwork is there on the table if you'd like to verify. As the reality sank in, Derek's anger gave way to desperation. Rachel, please. We can work through this. 15 years of marriage isn't something to throw away rashly. You threw it away, Rachel corrected him. Year after year, lie after lie. I'm just formalizing what you've already destroyed. Derek turned to Emma, his expression softening. Emma, baby, I know this is a shock, but what we have is real. I was going to tell you everything, make things right. Emma's laugh was bitter. When? After I had your child? After we got married with a license and a false name that wouldn't even be legal? You told me you wanted to build a future together, Derek, but how could we build anything real on a foundation of lies? The divorce papers will be served Monday, Rachel added. I've transferred half of our joint accounts into my personal account, all meticulously documented and well within legal bounds. The contents of the safe deposit box have been moved to secure storage. And your vintage watch collection is in a climate-controlled unit until asset division is determined. Derek looked shell-shocked, struggling to process how thoroughly his carefully constructed world had collapsed. You've been busy, he managed finally. I've had a lot of catching up to do, considering you've been orchestrating this double life for years. Rachel's calm was unnerving even to herself, but the emotional breakdown would come later, in private. Now was for strength, for resolution. Where am I supposed to go tonight? Derek asked, the first hint of real vulnerability showing through his controlled facade. A hotel would be appropriate, Rachel suggested. I'm sure you're familiar with check-in procedures, given your expertise in maintaining separate residences. Emma stood abruptly. I should go. I've said what I needed to say. She turned to Rachel. Thank you for this. For the truth, however painful. Of course, Rachel nodded. I'll text you the details about accessing the cabin next week. Don't leave, Emma, Derek pleaded, reaching for her arm. We need to talk privately. Emma jerked away from his touch. There's nothing to discuss. You're a married man who constructed an elaborate fantasy life with me. You lied about your name, your marital status, your past, everything foundational to who you claimed to be. But I love you, Derek insisted. That part was real. How would I know? Emma asked simply. The man I loved doesn't exist. With that, she gathered her purse and walked out, leaving Derek staring after her with genuine devastation written across his face. When the front door closed, Rachel spoke quietly. You should pack some things. I'd prefer you not stay here tonight. Derek turned back to her, and for the first time, she saw something like genuine remorse in his expression. Rachel, I know you won't believe this right now, but I do love you. I always have. You're right, she agreed. I don't believe that. Love doesn't meticulously construct years of deception. Love doesn't create a separate identity and family. Love doesn't betray trust on such a fundamental level. It's complicated. No, it's actually quite simple. You wanted everything on your terms. 2 women, 2 homes, 2 entirely separate lives that you controlled completely. That's not love, Derek. That's pathological selfishness. He had no response to this assessment. After a moment, he nodded once and headed upstairs to pack an overnight bag. Rachel remained in the living room, maintaining her composure through sheer force of will. When Derek returned 20 minutes later with a suitcase, he paused in the doorway. Can we talk tomorrow? When things are calmer? My attorney will contact you next week regarding divorce proceedings. Any communication should go through proper channels from this point forward. Derek's shoulders slumped in defeat. 15 years, Rachel. Doesn't that count for anything? It counted for everything, she corrected him. Until I discovered it was built on deception. Goodbye, Derek. After he left, Rachel locked the door and finally allowed her carefully maintained facade to crumble. She sank onto the couch, her body racked with sobs that had been building since her discovery at the cabin. The grief wasn't just for her marriage but for the future she'd believed in, for the years invested in a relationship that had been fundamentally fraudulent. She cried until physical exhaustion overtook her, then dragged herself upstairs to the guest bedroom, unable to face the master suite she'd shared with Derek. Morning brought a strange calm. Rachel woke early, made coffee, and began methodically sorting through the house, identifying items that were clearly hers alone versus joint property that would require formal division. By noon, she had reconfigured the home office into her exclusive space, removing Derek's presence entirely. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emma. How are you holding up? Surprisingly functional, Rachel replied honestly. You? Alternating between rage and despair. Just took a pregnancy test. Negative, thankfully. Rachel felt genuine relief for the younger woman. That's good news. One less complication. Yes. Have you heard from him? Multiple texts and calls, all ignored. You? Same. I've blocked his number now. The exchange continued, an unexpected solidarity forming between them. By evening, they'd agreed to meet for coffee the following week after the cabin closing. Sunday passed in a blur of practical activities, changing locks, updating passwords, notifying close friends about the impending divorce. Derek continued his campaign of communication, escalating from text messages to emails with increasingly desperate pleas for conversation. Rachel forwarded them all to her attorney without response. The emotional wall she'd constructed wasn't just protection, it was necessary for survival. Monday morning, Derek was formally served with divorce papers at his hotel. By afternoon, his attorney had contacted Rachel's to begin negotiations. The cabin sale proceeded on schedule, with closing documents prepared for Wednesday morning. Tuesday evening, Rachel's doorbell rang. She approached cautiously, checking through the peephole to find Derek standing on the porch, his appearance disheveled in a way she'd never seen before. "Rachel, please," he called through the door. "Just 10 minutes. That's all I'm asking." She hesitated, then opened the door but remained in the threshold, blocking entry. 10 minutes. Here on the porch. Derek looked like he hadn't slept in days. His usually impeccable appearance was markedly diminished, unshaven, hair uncombed, wearing the same wrinkled shirt she'd seen in a photo Emma had shared from his desperate attempt to contact her as well. "The cabin sale closes tomorrow," he began without preamble. "Please reconsider. That property means everything to me." Rachel almost laughed at the absurdity. "That property represents your systematic betrayal of our marriage. It's the physical embodiment of your deception. I'll give you anything else. The house, the cars, the investment accounts, just not the cabin. Why is it so important to you?" Rachel asked, genuinely curious about his attachment to the property. Derek ran a hand through his unkempt hair. It was the one place where I felt I could be my authentic self." The statement hung between them, its unintended cruelty landing like a physical blow. "Your authentic self," Rachel repeated slowly. "So the man I've been married to for 15 years, the man who shared my bed and my life, that was your inauthentic self?" Derek winced. "That's not what I meant." "It's exactly what you meant. You created the cabin as a sanctuary for the person you actually wanted to be, with the woman you actually wanted to be with." Rachel's voice remained level despite the pain his words had inflicted. "Thank you for that clarity. It makes tomorrow's closing all the more satisfying." "Rachel, please. Your 10 minutes are up, Derek." She stepped back and began closing the door. "I'll see you in court." Wednesday morning, Rachel sat in her attorney's office as the cabin sale was finalized via electronic signature. The proceeds were transferred to a new escrow account established specifically for this transaction, where they would remain until formal asset division during the divorce. That afternoon, she met Emma at a small coffee shop in Midtown, away from their usual haunts. "It's done," Rachel confirmed as they settled at a table in the back. "The cabin officially belongs to the Williams family from Tampa now." Emma nodded, a complex mix of emotions crossing her face. "I've arranged to collect my things on Friday. My parents are coming with me." "Good. You shouldn't have to do that alone." Rachel hesitated, then added, "I know the cabin held genuine memories for you, despite everything. I'm sorry for any pain this causes you." "The cabin was built on lies, just like the relationship," Emma replied. "Painful as it is, selling it was the right decision. A clean break." They spoke for over an hour, sharing details of Derek's desperate attempts to contact each of them and comparing notes on his contradictory explanations and promises. "He told me he's considering moving to Chicago to make a fresh start once the divorce is finalized," Rachel revealed. "Apparently he has a job offer there." Emma shook her head in disbelief. "He told me he's looking at positions in Boston, where he claims he's always wanted to live." "More lies, even now," Rachel said, unsurprised. "I wonder if there's a third woman in Chicago or Boston we don't know about yet." "I wouldn't be shocked," Emma admitted. The depth of his deception suggests a pattern, not an isolated double life. As they prepared to leave, Emma hesitated. "I know this is an unusual circumstance, but would it be okay if we stayed in touch? There's no one else who truly understands what this experience has been like." Rachel considered the request. Under normal circumstances, maintaining contact with her husband's affair partner would be unthinkable. But nothing about this situation was normal, and the solidarity they developed felt genuine and mutually supportive. "I'd like that," she decided. "We've both lost so much to the same man's lies. There's a certain comfort in not facing the aftermath alone." They parted with a brief hug, united by shared betrayal and the beginning of separate healing journeys. The following weeks brought a flurry of legal proceedings as the divorce moved forward. Derek fought bitterly over every asset, particularly the cabin proceeds, but his position was weakened by the documented deception and hidden assets discovered during financial disclosure. His cryptocurrency holdings, which he'd initially denied existed, were located by forensic accountants and added to the marital property for division. His attempts to claim the cabin was purchased with separate, non-marital funds failed when financial tracing revealed the money had come from income earned during the marriage. 3 months after the initial discovery, Rachel sat in her attorney's office reviewing the final settlement offer. Derek had finally conceded on most points, recognizing his diminishing leverage as more details of his deception became part of the court record. He gets to keep his cryptocurrency, minus the portion transferred to you, Barbara summarized. You keep the house and your retirement accounts. The cabin proceeds are split 70/30 in your favor, given the circumstances of its purchase and sale. All things considered, this is an excellent outcome. Rachel signed the documents, a sense of closure washing over her. When will it be official? The judge should sign off next week. 30 days after that, the divorce is final. As she left the office, Rachel's phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Got a job offer in Seattle. Cross-country move feels right. Fresh start. Congratulations. That's wonderful news, Rachel replied sincerely. How are things on your end? Just signed final settlement papers. Divorce should be official in about 5 weeks. Dinner to celebrate both our new beginnings before I leave? Rachel smiled at the suggestion. Absolutely. Let me know when works for you. 6 weeks later, Rachel stood in her newly redecorated living room, all traces of Derek and their shared life together erased. The divorce was final, the assets divided, the legal battle concluded with results heavily favoring her position. Emma had moved to Seattle, sending occasional updates about her new job and apartment. Derek, according to mutual connections, had indeed relocated to Chicago, though whether for a job or another secret relationship remained unknown. The doorbell rang, and Rachel opened it to find Kate on her doorstep, suitcases in hand for her week-long visit from Boston. Look at you, Kate exclaimed, embracing her sister tightly. You're positively glowing with divorce freedom. Rachel laughed, helping with the luggage. It feels good to be on the other side of everything. And the cabin money? Any plans for it? Rachel smiled as they settled in the living room. Actually, yes. I've been researching properties in the North Carolina mountains. Different area, different style, but still that mountain setting I've always loved. Wait, you're buying another mountain cabin? After everything? Derek's betrayal shouldn't rob me of something I've always wanted, Rachel explained. He knew I loved mountain settings. It's why he kept his cabin secret, claiming to hate the very thing he was enjoying with Emma. I'm reclaiming that desire for myself. Kate raised her glass in a toast. To reclamation, then. And to unexpected journeys. To unexpected journeys, Rachel agreed, clinking glasses with her sister. And to discovering that sometimes, the wrong turn leads exactly where you need to go. 1 year after discovering Derek's double life, Rachel stood on the deck of her new mountain home, watching the sunrise paint the North Carolina peaks in brilliant orange and gold. The cabin, though she preferred to call it a mountain retreat, was smaller than Derek's Blue Ridge property but infinitely more meaningful, designed to her exact specifications and built with honest intentions. Her phone chimed with a text from Emma, 1-year anniversary of D-Day. How are you feeling? Rachel smiled at the message. Their unusual friendship had endured despite the distance, occasional video calls and text updates maintaining a connection forged in mutual betrayal. Surprisingly peaceful, she replied. Watching the sunrise from my deck. You? Just finished a 5-mile run along the Seattle waterfront. Feeling strong. We've come a long way. That we have. Talk soon. Enjoy your mountains. Rachel tucked the phone away and sipped her coffee, reflecting on the profound changes of the past year. The divorce had been finalized much as her attorney had outlined, with Rachel receiving a favorable settlement that acknowledged Derek's deception. The proceeds from selling his secret cabin had funded a significant portion of her new mountain home, a satisfying symmetry that felt like poetic justice. Professional changes had followed the personal ones. After 15 years working in hospital administration, Rachel had leveraged her experience into consulting work that allowed remote operation from her mountain home. The flexibility suited her reconfigured life, providing both financial stability and the freedom to build new routines. Her reverie was interrupted by the sound of a car coming up the gravel drive. She glanced at her watch, right on time. Setting down her coffee, Rachel went inside to grab her jacket before heading down to meet her visitor. Morning, beautiful, called James Harrison, emerging from his truck with a grocery bag in one arm. At 52, the local building contractor who had overseen her home construction moved with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his skin. Silver-streaked dark hair and laugh lines around his eyes gave him a distinguished appearance that Rachel found increasingly attractive. Right on schedule, she noted, taking the bag from him. You didn't have to bring breakfast. Consider it self-serving. I'm much better company when properly fed. His eyes crinkled with the smile that had initially caught her attention during their first meeting to discuss building plans. Their relationship had developed gradually and cautiously, coffee meetings to discuss construction details evolving into dinner conversations that had nothing to do with building materials, professional respect transforming into personal interest, careful friendship blossoming into something with romantic potential. Unlike the whirlwind romance of her 20s that had led to marriage with Derek, this connection was measured and deliberate. Both carried histories and scars that warranted thoughtful progression rather than impulsive commitment. Inside, they worked together preparing breakfast, James cooking eggs while Rachel sliced fruit and made toast. The easy domesticity felt both novel and comfortable, a glimpse of possibilities still unfolding. "Heard from your lawyer friend yesterday," James mentioned as they sat down to eat. "The one handling the charity foundation paperwork. Barbara? What's the update?" "Everything's approved. The Thompson Mountain Educational Trust is officially recognized as a 501(c)(3). Rachel felt a surge of satisfaction. The foundation had been her response to discovering, during divorce proceedings, that Derek had maintained a scholarship fund in his family name, another performance of generosity that had been more about appearances than actual charitable intent. Her foundation, funded with a portion of her settlement, would provide educational opportunities for women recovering from domestic abuse and financial exploitation. The mission statement specifically mentioned survivors of deceptive relationships among those eligible for assistance. "That's wonderful news," she said. "We can start accepting applications for the fall semester. Your sister still planning to serve on the board?" "Kate's all in. She's flying down next month for the first official meeting." They discussed foundation details as they ate, the project having become a shared interest since James had volunteered his construction company's services for the eventual learning center they hoped to build. After breakfast, they took their coffee out to the deck. The conversation shifted to James's daughter, who was graduating college next month. "Miranda's decided to take the job in Charlotte," he said, obvious pride in his voice. "Starting salary is better than what I was making 10 years into my career." "That's fantastic," Rachel replied. "Will you be okay with her living that far from Asheville? Charlotte's only a couple hours away. And honestly, after helping raise her solo since she was 12, I'm proud to see her independent and thriving." He glanced at Rachel. "Speaking of Charlotte, I'm headed there next weekend for a building supply convention. 2-day event, nothing exciting." "Supply conventions can be riveting," Rachel teased. "All those discussions about lumber grades and hardware innovations. Mock all you want, but the new sustainable insulation technologies are genuinely fascinating," he countered with a grin. "Anyway, I was wondering if you might want to join me? We could make a weekend of it. There's a jazz festival happening downtown, and that botanical garden you mentioned wanting to visit." The invitation hung between them, significant in its implications. They'd been seeing each other for nearly 5 months but had maintained separate spaces, neither rushing toward greater intimacy or commitment. A weekend trip represented a potential shift in their careful trajectory. Rachel considered the invitation, appreciating both its straightforwardness and the absence of pressure in James's expression. "I'd like that," she decided. "The jazz festival sounds wonderful." His smile conveyed genuine pleasure without triumphant satisfaction. "Great. I'll book 2 rooms at the hotel where the convention's being held. They're holding a block for attendees." "2 rooms?" Rachel raised an eyebrow. "2 rooms," he confirmed, "with a connecting door that can remain open or closed according to your comfort level. No assumptions, no expectations." The consideration behind this arrangement, his awareness of her need for both closeness and autonomy, reinforced Rachel's growing certainty that James Harrison represented a healthier relationship model than she'd previously experienced. "I appreciate that," she said softly. "I appreciate you," he replied simply. "And whatever pace makes this feel right for both of us is the correct one." As they finished their coffee, the conversation turned to practical matters, updates on her property landscaping, plans for a greenhouse addition, local community events. The ease of their interaction continued to surprise Rachel, who had emerged from her marriage doubting her ability to trust or connect meaningfully again. James left mid-morning for a client meeting, kissing her cheek with the casual affection that had become their comfortable norm. Rachel returned to her home office to handle consulting work, the rhythm of her day resuming without disruption. That evening, a video call notification from Emma appeared on Rachel's laptop. She accepted, and the familiar face of her unlikely friend filled the screen, Emma looking healthy and vibrant, Seattle's skyline visible through a window behind her. "Happy D-Day anniversary," Emma said wryly. "Hard to believe it's been a year since we ambushed him in your living room." "One of the more surreal experiences of my life," Rachel agreed. "How's everything in the Pacific Northwest?" They caught up on their respective lives, Emma's research position at the University of Washington, her new apartment with a water view, the hiking club she'd joined. Rachel shared updates about her consulting work and the foundation's official approval. And James? Emma asked with a knowing smile. Still taking things glacially slow? Rachel laughed. We're evolving at a deliberate pace. Weekend trip to Charlotte coming up though. Separate rooms? With a connecting door. Emma nodded approvingly. He continues to earn my long-distance endorsement. How about you? Any promising developments in the romance department? Emma's expression shifted slightly. Actually, yes. I've been seeing someone for about 2 months. Environmental attorney, very different from you-know-who. Divorced, transparent about his past, introduces me as his girlfriend to colleagues and friends. The bar is literally on the ground, Rachel noted dryly. Sad but true. Emma paused, then added, I did a thorough background check before the second date. Trust but verify is my new relationship motto. Completely reasonable, Rachel assured her. I practically created a dossier on James before agreeing to dinner the first time. They shared a laugh at their parallel caution, the shadow of Derek's deception having shaped both their approaches to new relationships. Have you heard anything? Emma asked, the question not requiring elaboration. Rachel knew she meant Derek. Nothing directly. Barbara mentioned his attorney contacted her about some tax document, but otherwise radio silence. You? He sent flowers on my birthday last month. How did he even know your birth date? Actually, never mind. He probably maintained a detailed spreadsheet to keep his lies organized. Probably, Emma agreed. The card just said thinking of you with his initial. I donated the arrangement to a retirement home and blocked the florist. Good call. Their conversation continued for nearly an hour, the unique bond of their shared experience providing a foundation for genuine friendship that transcended its unusual origins. After ending the call, Rachel wandered out to her deck again, watching as twilight settled over the mountains. The evening air carried the scent of pine and the distant sound of a waterfall on her property, peaceful elements of the mountain setting Derek had claimed to despise while secretly enjoying with another woman. The irony wasn't lost on Rachel that his deception had ultimately led her to discover her true affinity for mountain living. In trying to maintain separate worlds, he had inadvertently guided her to where she truly belonged. Her phone chimed with an email notification, Barbara, forwarding a message from Derek's attorney requesting permission to access the storage unit where some of his remaining possessions were held. Rachel typed a quick response authorizing temporary access, feeling nothing but mild administrative annoyance at the task. The emotional detachment was its own victory. Where once thoughts of Derek had triggered profound pain and anger, now they generated little more than clinical observation and occasional bemusement at the absurdity of his elaborate deceptions. Therapy had helped, providing tools to process the betrayal without allowing it to define her future capacity for connection. But the most powerful healing had come from reclaiming her autonomy, financial, residential, professional, and emotional independence built on her terms. As darkness settled over the mountains, Rachel lit the fire pit on her deck and settled into a comfortable chair, opening the novel James had recommended. The quiet contentment of the moment struck her as particularly significant. A year ago, she couldn't have imagined feeling peaceful again, let alone building a new life she genuinely cherished. The next morning brought an unexpected development. An email from Barbara arrived with a surprising subject line, Dr. wants to meet. Rachel opened it cautiously. Derek has requested a brief meeting with you regarding some personal items in storage he claims have sentimental value. Normally I'd advise against direct contact, but all financial matters are settled, and the divorce has been final for months. Your choice entirely. I can handle this through proper channels if you prefer. Rachel considered the request carefully. Her immediate instinct was refusal. What possible benefit could come from seeing Derek again? Yet a small part of her was curious. Not about reconciliation or even explanation, but about whether the man who had constructed such elaborate deceptions had found any genuine insight or accountability in the aftermath. After careful consideration, she replied, I'm willing to meet for 30 minutes in your office with you present. No other location, no private conversation. Barbara's response came quickly, confirming she would arrange the meeting and serve as intermediary. 2 days later, Rachel entered her attorney's office with measured composure. She'd chosen her outfit deliberately, a professional dress in deep blue that she'd purchased after the divorce, something Derek had never seen, representing her new life rather than their shared past. Barbara greeted her with a supportive smile. He's already here. Remember, this is entirely on your terms. We can end the meeting at any point. Rachel nodded and followed her into the conference room. Derek stood as she entered, and Rachel was struck by how different he appeared from the man she'd been married to for 15 years. He'd lost weight, acquired new glasses, and styled his hair differently, surface changes that seemed to reflect deeper alterations. "Rachel," he said, his voice carrying none of the confident charm she'd once found attractive. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." She took a seat across from him, Barbara positioning herself at the head of the table between them. "You requested this meeting. What do you need?" Derek sat down, hands clasped before him. "There are some family photographs in storage, pictures of my parents and grandparents that have no monetary value but significant personal meaning." "You've had access to the storage unit several times," Rachel pointed out. "Why haven't you collected these items already?" "I wasn't thinking clearly during those visits. I was focused on financial documents and valuable possessions." He hesitated. "And I suppose I wasn't ready to face certain memories." Rachel studied him, noting the absence of the practiced sincerity that had once characterized his interactions. This Derek seemed almost authentic in his discomfort. "I can have the unit contents catalogued and those specific items sent to you," she offered, seeing no reason to withhold family photographs that meant nothing to her. "Thank you." He paused, then added, "That's not the only reason I wanted to meet." Rachel tensed slightly. "The 30 minutes are for your entire agenda, whatever it includes." Derek nodded. "Fair enough." He took a deep breath. "I wanted to apologize. Not for the outcome, I understand that nothing could repair what I destroyed, but for the pain I caused you through years of deception." "Are you in therapy?" Rachel asked directly. The question seemed to surprise him. "Yes. Twice weekly for the past 10 months. "Good. Because that apology sounded rehearsed but not insincere. "Progress, I suppose." A flicker of something, perhaps genuine remorse, crossed his face. "I'm trying to understand why I created the situation I did. Why I couldn't choose, couldn't be honest, couldn't live authentically in any aspect of my life. And? Any insights worth sharing?" "My therapist believes I have a pathological fear of disappointing others, combined with an inability to establish healthy boundaries. I created separate worlds where I could be whatever each person needed or wanted, avoiding the conflict that comes with authentic relationships." Rachel considered this. "That explanation makes you sound like a victim of your psychology rather than the architect of deliberate deception." "You're right," he acknowledged. "And that's the harder truth I'm still working to fully accept. I made calculated choices repeatedly, prioritizing my desires and comfort over the well-being of 2 women who trusted me. The psychological factors might explain the vulnerability, but they don't excuse the actions." This frank acknowledgement surprised Rachel. She had expected defensiveness or continued manipulation, not apparent accountability. "Have you spoken with Emma?" she asked. "She's blocked all contact." "Rightfully so." He looked down at his hands. "I sent flowers on her birthday." A pathetic gesture. "Yes, it was," Rachel agreed. "She donated them to a retirement home." Derek nodded, accepting this information without protest. "I heard you bought property in the mountains. That seems fitting. Through mutual connections or direct surveillance?" Rachel asked sharply. "Kate mentioned it to a former colleague who remains friendly with me," he clarified quickly. "I haven't sought information about your life, Rachel. I'm trying to respect boundaries I should have maintained years ago." Barbara glanced at her watch. "We're at the 20-minute mark. Would you like to continue or conclude the meeting?" Rachel considered the question, then decided to satisfy one lingering curiosity. "I have a question before we finish. Are there others beyond Emma and me? Other relationships, other deceptions we haven't discovered?" Derek met her gaze directly. "No. Just the 2 separate lives you uncovered. Though that's damage enough for several lifetimes." Something in his direct response convinced Rachel he was telling the truth, perhaps the first complete honesty she'd experienced from him in years. "I believe you," she said simply. "About that specific question, at least." "Thank you." He hesitated, then added, "I want you to know that I've made arrangements to establish a scholarship fund that matches your foundation's mission. Not for credit or recognition, it will be anonymously funded. But because supporting women affected by deceptive relationships seems like an appropriate consequence for my actions." Rachel hadn't expected this. "That's actually meaningful." "It doesn't undo anything," he acknowledged. "But it might create some small positive outcome from the considerable harm I've caused." As the meeting concluded, Derek made no attempt to prolong the interaction or establish continued contact. At the door, he paused briefly. "I do wish you happiness, Rachel. Not that my wishes carry any weight after everything." "They don't," she confirmed without malice. "But I appreciate the sentiment nonetheless." Driving back to her mountain home, Rachel felt an unexpected lightness. The meeting hadn't provided dramatic closure or profound revelations, but it had confirmed what she already knew. Her life had progressed significantly while Derek was still grappling with the consequences of his choices. That evening, she called James to share the experience. "How do you feel about it?" he asked after listening to her recount the meeting. Strangely unbothered, Rachel replied honestly. A year ago, seeing him would have triggered intense emotional reactions. Today, it was like talking to someone I used to know but have no particular connection to anymore. "That sounds like healing," James observed. "I think it is." Rachel settled into her favorite chair, looking out at the moonlight on the mountains. "He seems genuinely remorseful, but that's his journey, not mine." "And your journey looks pretty good from where I stand," James said warmly. "It does, doesn't it?" Rachel smiled. "I sometimes wonder if I should thank him. If he hadn't left that work phone in the Lexus, if the GPS hadn't led me to the cabin, I might still be living someone else's version of my life." "The universe works in mysterious ways," James agreed. "Still planning to join me in Charlotte next weekend?" "Absolutely. I've already picked out which jazz performances I want to see." Their conversation continued easily, plans and possibilities unfolding between them without pressure or deception. Later, as Rachel prepared for bed, she received a text from Emma, just checking in. "How did the meeting with Dee go?" "Better than expected. He seems genuinely remorseful, though that's his burden to carry, not mine." "Exactly. His growth or lack thereof isn't our responsibility anymore." "How's the environmental attorney treating you?" "Taking me sailing this weekend. Background check came back clean, and his ex-wife actually speaks highly of him. Low bar, but he's clearing it with room to spare." Rachel smiled at the exchange, appreciating how their parallel journeys continued to provide mutual support. 6 months later, Rachel stood on the deck of her mountain home, this time watching a sunset with James beside her, his arm comfortably around her waist. The weekend in Charlotte had marked a turning point in their relationship, the careful pace giving way to deeper connection while maintaining the honesty and respect that had characterized their interaction from the beginning. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, noticing her contemplative expression. "I was just thinking about paths not taken," Rachel replied. "How different life would be if I hadn't borrowed Derek's car that day, if I hadn't discovered the GPS history. Do you ever regret finding out? Would blissful ignorance have been easier?" Rachel considered the question seriously. "No. Living a lie, even unknowingly, isn't really living. I prefer difficult truth to comfortable fiction." James nodded understanding. "That philosophy seems to be working well for you." "For us," she corrected, turning to face him. "Difficult truths are much easier to navigate with the right companion." He smiled, the genuine warmth in his expression a reminder of what authentic connection felt like. "Speaking of navigation, I'd been thinking about our discussion last month, about potentially sharing living spaces." They had tentatively broached the subject of James possibly moving in, the gradual evolution of their relationship making cohabitation a logical consideration. "I'm still open to the possibility," Rachel confirmed, "but I appreciate that we're both being thoughtful about the transition." "Absolutely. Which is why I wanted to suggest a middle step." He reached into his pocket and removed a small key. "I had this made for you. For my house. Not to rush anything, but to make it easier for you to come and go as you're comfortable." The gesture, practical yet meaningful, offering connection without demand, exemplified the healthy balance they'd established. Rachel accepted the key with a smile. "I happen to have something similar for you." She retrieved a key from a side table. Great minds think alike. As they exchanged keys, symbolic access to each other's spaces without surrendering individual autonomy, Rachel reflected on how differently this relationship had developed compared to her marriage. The foundation wasn't exciting whirlwind romance or swept-away passion, but something far more durable: mutual respect, clear communication, and genuine acceptance. The Thompson Mountain Educational Trust Board approved the first 5 scholarship recipients today, she mentioned as they settled into deck chairs to watch the final moments of sunset. 2 of them were victims of financial deception by partners. One lost everything to a husband who'd been gambling away their retirement for years without her knowledge. The foundation's doing important work, James noted. Practical support for rebuilding after betrayal. Something I wish had existed when I was trying to find my footing, Rachel agreed. Though I was fortunate to have financial resources many women don't. As darkness settled over the mountains, James built a fire in the outdoor fire pit. The familiar comfort of their routine, conversation flowing easily from personal to professional topics, shared interests explored without either dominating, respectful space for individual thoughts, continued to reinforce Rachel's confidence in this new chapter. Later that evening, Emma sent a photo of herself and her attorney boyfriend on his sailboat, both smiling genuinely at the camera with Seattle's skyline behind them. The caption read, "He asked. I said yes. Small ceremony next spring. You're definitely invited." Rachel smiled at the announcement, typing a heartfelt congratulation. The unexpected friendship that had emerged from shared betrayal had evolved into something meaningful for both women, a connection that honored their parallel journeys through deception toward authentic living. As she prepared for bed, Rachel caught her reflection in the bedroom mirror and paused, really seeing herself. At 47, she looked somehow younger than she had 2 years ago, not in physical features, but in the vitality and presence she projected. The woman who had discovered her husband's GPS history and followed it to a devastating revelation had emerged stronger, wiser, and more genuinely herself than she'd been in decades. Derek's secret cabin, the place he'd sworn he'd never want to visit, had indeed led Rachel exactly where she needed to go, though not in any way he could have anticipated. The mountaintop retreat she now called home represented not just geographical preference but philosophical position, elevated perspective, clarity of vision, and the courage to stand firmly in her truth regardless of the weather that might come. Tomorrow, she would continue building this authentically chosen life. For tonight, she rested in the peaceful certainty that sometimes, the most painful discoveries lead to the most necessary journeys, and getting thoroughly lost can be the first step toward finding your true direction home.